Next on the news, the search for the missing Vatican girl, why the brother of Emanuela Orlandi feels like some progress is being made. Plus, why the gun used in the Louisville shooting that killed 5 people will go back onto the streets. And then,
the church I belong to in West Hartford, we don't have a priest.
Dealing with a priest shortage, the serious issue churches are facing. And a flood of biblical proportions. Crews rescue stranded people in Florida after a massive storm. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Hunting for answers, the Pope wants to get to the bottom of the mysterious disappearance of the so-called Vatican Girl. Now, 40 years later, a major effort is moving forward to finding the truth. Emanuela Orlandi, the 15-year-old daughter of a Vatican employee, went missing in June of 1983. Now the case is being given another hard look. The brother says he feels like the search for the Vatican Girl is finally getting the attention it deserves. The brother of Emanuela Orlandi, the young Vatican citizen who went missing decades ago, arrived at the Holy See Wednesday for an 8-hour meeting with the Vatican's promoter of justice, Alessandro Ditti. Pietro Orlandi said the two discussed the recent reopening of the investigation into the 15-year-old's disappearance in 1983.
Devo dire che ho trovato
I have to say that I found a lot of willingness coming from Ditti, from the promoters, to provide clarity. The very fact that they had said that I received the assignment from Pope Francis and the Secretary of State to give 100% clarity, investigate 360 degrees, and not discount anyone.
Orlandi said he's satisfied with his meeting at the Vatican because in 40 years, he said no one ever listened to him like they did this time around. He said he was able to make all his petitions known and even hand over a list of names of people in high positions who he believes may have some information about what happened to his sister in '83.
Ho fatto l'elenco di tutte le persone.
I listed all the people, cardinals who need to be questioned because, in my opinion, they could almost certainly have had a role and be aware of the facts. They did not exclude anyone.
The list included Cardinals Giovanni Battista Re and Leonardo Sandri and the then commander of the Vatican Security Force. Orlandi also praised how Ditti has compiled all the existing documentation of the case over the last 40 years. In an interview with an Italian newspaper, the promoter of justice acknowledged that there were many documents covered in dust.
Visto che negli anni passati il Vaticano ha sempre detto che no.
In the past, the Vatican always said there was not even a piece of paper on the case. But evidently, among the things that came out are pages covered in dust, documents dating back a long time ago.
Ditti also told the paper that Pope Francis has granted him maximum freedom of action to investigate the case without any conditions. Orlandi says he hopes to have more meetings with him to learn more about his sister's disappearance. A disturbing update on that shooting in Louisville, Kentucky. According to Louisville Mayor Craig Greenberg, the gun used to kill 5 bank employees could be back on the streets.
Under current Kentucky law, the assault rifle that was used to murder 5 of our neighbors and shoot at rescuing police officers will one day be auctioned off. Think about that. That murder weapon will be back on the streets one day under Kentucky's current law.
Also under Kentucky law, the gun can be incapacitated by removing the firing pins, but doing so any other way is illegal in the state. Developing tonight in the ongoing abortion pill debate, a federal appeals court has ruled mifepristone can still be used for now. The decision late Wednesday did limit the period of pregnancy when the drug can be taken. The pill can also not be dispensed by mail, further curtailing access to mifepristone. The ruling comes after a lower court judge in Texas completely blocked the FDA's approval of the common abortion method. Now the Justice Department said it will ask the Supreme Court for an emergency order to put any action on hold. Those looking to get the abortion pill are going online to suppliers overseas. Coming up on a year since the Dobbs decision, experts believe some 100,000 people in the United States have been provided pills from abroad. That's enough pills to cover about 10% of the country's annual abortions. It's unclear how prosecutors could crack down on the mailed-in pills. While the federal government is responsible for the Postal Service and Customs Enforcement, sorting through the millions of packages a day is unlikely to be a priority. Here in New York, Governor Kathy Hochul has announced she is stockpiling abortion medication and forcing health insurers to cover it. The New York State Catholic Conference is fighting this plan, which includes a series of taxpayer-funded abortion expansion actions. To voice your objection to New York's governor, just go to nyscatholic.org and click on the Take Action tab. In a surprise turn of events, the Department of Justice is recommending no jail time for the person that vandalized a church in Bellevue, Washington. These are the pictures of the mess at St. Louis Catholic Church. The person smashed 2 glass doors, spray painted profane messages, destroyed a statue, and more. The DOJ did recommend 3 years probation. Also tonight, growing concerns in America's opioid crisis.
We're sending a clear message.
Why the White House is raising a number of red flags over a drug cocktail. Right now on Currents News, a new emerging threat. We must act now. That's the message the administration is declaring as drug deaths from a mixture of an animal tranquilizer and the powerful opioid fentanyl have been steadily increasing over the last few years. Ivan Rodriguez has more, but first a warning. You may find some images disturbing.
A potentially deadly drug mix spreading across the U.S.
In almost all 50 states now.
Fentanyl cut with xylazine, the animal sedative, can do major damage to humans, leaving some users scared and wounded. For the first time since the passing of a 2018 law allowing it to do so, the Biden administration taking the unprecedented step of officially declaring a substance an emerging threat. It means some of President Biden's more than $46 billion drug budget request to Congress can be used to respond. The money could help pay for drug testing, data collecting, and developing treatments.
We're sending a clear message to producers and traffickers of illicit xylazine and illicit fentanyl that we're going to respond quicker.
An uphill battle in an ever-changing drug landscape.
Both the types of drugs have changed from predominantly organic to predominantly synthetics, but the way drugs are bought and sold have also changed. Now all you need is a phone in the palm of your hand and a social media app.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
Anyone's family, regardless of income or background, can be hurt by America's opioid crisis. If you or someone you know needs any form of help, simply visit Catholic Charities of Brooklyn and Queens. They're located at 1463 Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11210. Again, that's 1463 Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, 11210 for addiction treatment. It's in the books. Literally, the U.S. bishops are unveiling the final version of North America's Synod on Synodality. It's a mission to find out exactly what every Catholic wants from their church. The document is the result of synod listening sessions in the U.S. and Canada. It brings up key themes such as our common baptism, the importance of communion with Christ, and sharing good news with the world, and so much more. Almost 150 bishops were involved, including Bishop Robert Brennan of the Diocese of Brooklyn. Last year, I spoke with the bishop about the synod process and asked him how it will help priests become more pastoral in Brooklyn and Queens.
We have to look at how we're structured as a church and what does it mean to be Catholic today? You know, Brooklyn was always the borough of many churches, and now we have the heavier challenges. How do we see ourselves as a Catholic family, a family of families? And how do we function in such a way that that we can keep our eye fixed on the priorities, on Christ and on our life in Christ?
The bishop added that we have a number of dedicated priests in the diocese to guide people, and there's always a need to address concerns such as communicating with a diverse community and helping those who are disenfranchised with the church. One of the things that came out of the Diocese of Brooklyn's Synod sessions was the Lenten Pilgrimage. The 40-day journey leading up to Easter was part of an overarching call to see more of what the diocese has to offer. So the pilgrims packed up their passports, visiting 42 parishes across Brooklyn and Queens. Each day offered a variety of Eucharistic activities such as Mass and adoration. You can read all about the Lenten Pilgrimage in this week's tablet. The paper talks to a group of pilgrims who attended most, if not all, of the journey, asking them about their experience and what they gained from it. But you'll have to pick up the paper to read more about it. The paper also delves into Holy Week within the Diocese of Brooklyn, see how Catholics celebrated Christ's resurrection, plus a first-hand account from one of our newest Catholics on her journey leading up to the Easter Vigil. Just be sure to pick up a copy of the paper at your local church this weekend. You can also get future editions sent right to your mailbox at thetablet.org. A number of churches across the country are in need of priests. The amount of clergy leaders has drastically dropped over the last half century, and there's no easy fix to the problem. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has more on the issue facing communities in Connecticut.
When Bishop Juan Miguel Betancourt was in the seminary, he was told there was a major need for Catholic priests.
The conversations have been happening for a while now.
The conversation continues, but the problem is growing in our communities. Now the auxiliary bishop for the Archdiocese of Hartford, Betancourt, is trying to find a solution.
We have to do everything possible.
According to the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, the number of priests nationwide is down 60% in the last 50 years. Leaving more than 3,500 churches without a resident pastor. And the Archdiocese of Hartford is also feeling that shortage. 50 priests have left active ministry since 2017, with another 35 expected to retire before 2030.
You see how our priests are spreading thin.
Parishioners like Una Woods are noticing too. She's heading into noon Mass at the Cathedral of St. Joseph in Hartford.
The church I belong to in West Hartford, we don't have a priest.
It's becoming more common in Connecticut. Priests having to rotate to several churches in their community.
Well, we need more priests.
The push to recruit is on, but it's tough. Bishop Betancourt believes decades ago, a growing distrust in society's major institutions began, including the church. The child sex abuse crisis has had heavy impacts on the Catholic Church financially and with recruitment. That plus 5 to 7 years of school.
So all these things, have contributed.
We say a prayer every at the end of the Mass for priests.
It's going to be a challenge, a very, big one.
Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Are you or someone you know interested in becoming a priest to share God's message with your community? Simply visit brooklynpriest.org to find out more about the process of becoming a church leader. Again, that's brooklynpriest.org to find out more. There's a lot more news headed your way. Temple Mount tensions. Non-Muslims are banned from the holy site until the end of Ramadan. Also, protests intensify in Paris. Smoke bombs and tear gas as people battle a pension ruling. And lending a helping hand. The group helping tornado victims in the cleanup process.
Holy Week in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Currents News was there to cover it all. From the Palm Sunday procession.
About 100 Catholics took to the streets of Brooklyn.
To the Chrism Mass.
Currents News' Jessica Easthope is in the thick of it all.
There are some priests here celebrating their 65th anniversary of ordination.
The conclusion of the first Lenten pilgrimage.
Bishop Brennan joined pilgrims for a majority of the journey.
Holy Thursday and the Way of the Cross on Good Friday.
The Way of the Cross is making its way over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Plus, powerful testimonies from new Catholics.
I'm blessed to be able to wake up every morning.
And a message of hope from Bishop Brennan.
Christ is alive.
Currents News is there. Happy Easter.
This is a busy time for people of faith. Catholics celebrating Easter and Eastertide, Jewish people celebrating Passover, and Muslim worshipers taking part in Ramadan. But there is some volatility at a holy site for two of those religions after the Israeli government banned non-Muslims from the Temple Mount until the end of Ramadan. Salma Abdulaziz has the story.
A delicate balance that governs and binds this holy site is under strain. My producer and I, both Muslim-born, were granted access to film at the Al-Aqsa compound by the custodians of the site. Only Muslims are allowed to pray here, under a long-standing status quo arrangement that worshippers tell us is slowly being eroded. Non-Muslims can visit the complex during certain hours. I feel pain, true pain inside, this woman tells me. This is a place of worship, not a place for occupation or for provocation. This is what she means. While we speak, a group of largely Jewish visitors passes by the mosque under police escort. The women demonstrate by reciting the Quran louder and louder. This mountaintop is revered by Jews, too. They call it Temple Mount. A growing movement of Jewish extremists is demanding to perform prayers here. That could upend the status quo. The Director General of Al-Aqsa sees the increasing visits of Jewish extremists under police escort as a provocation. I see these visits as an attack on our holy site, he tells me, and I warn the government of Israel to stay away from Al-Aqsa Mosque because any violation here drags down the entire region. And there are taunts at the gates. Small groups of Jewish radicals sing the temple will be built, a reference to a far-right fringe call to build a third temple on the sacred grounds. Prime Minister Netanyahu insists he is committed to keeping the status quo. But under his government, the most far-right in Israel's history, extremist voices are growing louder and stronger. All this makes an already extremely contentious place ever more of a tinderbox. This prayer passed peacefully, as most do. But here, even quiet worship is not a guarantee. Sam Abdulaziz, Jerusalem.
Meantime, the head of the Catholic Church in the Holy Land is seeing a rise in Christian attacks there. According to the Vatican-appointed Latin Patriarch, the rise of Netanyahu's government has emboldened extremists who have harassed clergy and vandalized religious property. Now experts say 2023 is shaping up to be the worst year for Christians in a decade, saying while physical assaults and harassment of clergy often go unreported, there have been at least 7 serious cases of church vandalism from January to mid-March, which is more than there was in 2022 when only 6 incidents were recorded for the whole year. Protests in France became violent today as people stood their ground against a bill that would raise the state pension age from 62 to 64 years old. Tear gas was thrown and fights broke out, but people wanted their voices heard. Fred Pleitgen has more from the streets of France.
This march that has gone from one that has been very peaceful from the beginning to not so much right now. Again, the protesters here, of course, very angry at that pension reform that Emmanuel Macron has been trying to essentially beat through the legislative process here. And I think one of the interesting things that you guys see if we pan around, you can see that a lot of the folks here who are coming to protest, they are actually fairly young people who are protesting here. So to them, of course, it's about the pension reform, it's about raising the pension age, but it is also about the way that Emmanuel Macron has tried to do this, using executive powers to try and push all of this through. That's something a lot of people here don't take very well, and it certainly has damaged him, as you can see, considerably politically. Tomorrow evening, local time obviously, the Constitutional Council of this country is going to decide whether this law is constitutional or whether all of it or parts of it are not constitutional. And obviously that's a very, very important moment for the folks here. But a lot of the people that we've been speaking to are also saying no matter what the Constitutional Council decides, they are going to keep protesting. The area where these clashes are going on are definitely several blocks here, and if you look over there, you can see that there are, in some cases, things that have been set on fire, trash cans that have been set on fire, flashbangs that have gone off. You can see some of our colleagues here who've had paint all over them. That's something that's also being used, and you can really feel that this has now become about more than just the pension reform. It's become about the way that Emmanuel Macron is governing in general, and a lot of people are voicing their anger at that. And if you look at a lot of the signs that people are holding, if you look at a lot of the chants that we're hearing here on the street, there are a lot more generally against Emmanuel Macron's government than they are specifically against the pension reforms. You do have those people from the unions. As you can see, some projectiles flying again. These are rocks. People tend to break down the rocks here, some of the tarmac in the street, and then throw them at the police officers. This is just a small part of this march, but it does show that there is a big confrontation going on, obviously, with law enforcement here. But there's a lot of anger by some of these protesters against the police as well. Police in this country known sometimes to have some pretty heavy-handed tactics.
That was Fred Pleiken reporting. Still to come on Currents News, helping their fellow man when they need it most. The group that's allowing tornado victims to get a fresh start on life. Plus this.
I'm gonna go back and get your mommy and daddy, all right, bud?
Biblical floods hit Florida. The rescues you might not see for another 1,000 years. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. An event that happens once every 1,000 years. Well over a foot of rain falls on parts of Florida, causing chaos for people as residents and visitors alike search for safety. A day of nonstop rain caused biblical flooding in the streets of the Sunshine State. The massive rainfall happened in a 24-hour period. A state of emergency was issued. The Fort Lauderdale Airport plans to stay closed until Friday. Flash flooding caused people to abandon their cars, and firefighters worked hard to make rescues.
All right, I'm gonna go back and get your mommy and daddy, all right, bud?
It's already classified as the worst rain in Fort Lauderdale's history, but things may get worse before they get better. There's a chance the area will be hit with more storms in the next week. To help the people of Florida, just go to the Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Miami's page to donate. That's at ccadm.org. A nonprofit Christian group is lending a helping hand to a Mississippi community devastated by a tornado. Rolling Fork is looking to rebuild. And as Ross Adams explains, Christ in Action has the right tools.
We do free demolition of the property.
A homeowner watches as a crew with Christ in Action raised his mobile home Wednesday. He says he couldn't afford the cost to do it himself.
It was $3,000 to tear it down and $3 more to push it where they pushing it to the road. That's $6,000.
A lot of them would end up paying contractors to do it, and that can be anywhere, say, $5,000 up to $15,000 and more.
Kathleen Cunningham is a chaplain and lead assessor for Christ in Action.
Christ in Action is a nonprofit disaster relief organization.
The organization was founded more than 40 years ago by Minister Denny Nestle, who's spending the week in Rolling Fork helping to tear down homes for owners who won't have to pay a penny.
And even if they have money allocated in their insurance policy for demolition, we ask them to keep that, to bless them so that they could put it towards their rebuild.
According to Cunningham, Christ in Action volunteers have already demolished some 20 homes in the disaster zone.
We operate totally debt-free, and everything that is made or given to us, our ministry, is all from donations and donated equipment.
That was Ross Adams reporting. Christ in Action plans to demolish 20 to 30 more homes throughout Rolling Fork. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.